Thank you guys for joining me. This is The Bridge. It's about connecting different notable celebrities or notable personalities throughout the African diaspora so that we can understand each other a little bit more and do a little bit more of an exchange. I want to introduce Ebro, Darden, Hot 97, and Beats One, and DJ Edu. Am I pronouncing that correct?
It's Edu, but I mean, I'll
Edu,
give you a
thank you.
pass. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kenyan based One Extra. You're like the dude that put
The A in Afro beats. Yes.
on the, yeah, African music on the map.
Yeah, no,
At
no.
least for us to hear.
Yeah,
Tools from Nigeria and Tumabasa
Via the UK.
via the UK. I want to get into that.
yeah.
And Tumabasa, Rwandan by way of the US.
Hey, director of urban music.
Hey, director of urban music. So I want to get started on your origin stories. Edu, since you've been doing this for a moment, I want to get started with you. Can you let me know how you went from Kenya to London and what your process was?
Yeah, so I used to be a DJ in Kenya. Started off as a dancer, was sweating a lot, and I wasn't getting the girls. The DJs were getting all the girls. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do DJing. So I went into DJing, and that was fun for me, but I wanted to push the boundaries because, I mean, I was doing hip hop, R&B, dancehall in Kenya because those were the big things out there. And then I did this DJ competition in 99, which I won. The money I won with that, I came to the UK to study audio engineering. And then I got the One Extra gig in 2005. That's when African music was not the flavor at all. No one was playing it. No one understood it. And at the time, I had to do these mashups. So African music. So I'd do a fella with a Jay-Z. So just try and educate the crowd to see that, yo, music is music, whether it's from the motherland, whether it's here, you know. And now 15 years later, you know, the kids that I was, you know, encouraging back in the day are now big superstars. And I think my story is very similar to that of hip hop and how all other genres of music grow. And now I'm kind of like an African music ambassador. I enjoy the role. I mean, I have good relationships with, you know, loads of the artists, and I'm happy to be in this position now to just be able to share that with you all.
That's what's up. Tools. You started in London and then settled.
Yes. Of course, my parents are Nigerian, but I grew up in the UK. One of my first jobs out of uni was at MTV Networks Europe. So I was there for a while. That's when I really, really got into music. Then after that, I did a short stint at Walt Disney. Then I kind of got a bit tired of the media industry in the UK, and my parents have pretty much always lived in Nigeria, and they kept on pressuring me to come back. And I kind of had decided I was thinking about moving back, maybe just temporarily. And somebody told me about a radio station in Lagos, and I thought, you know what, why not? So I did a voice audition. I moved here. It's been 10 years. So I was a presenter initially, and now I'm the program director of The Beat. So we've got stations in different states across across Nigeria rather. And we also have, we've got a branch in the UK, in London. And in terms of my journey in this industry, in terms of the artists that I wouldn't say we discovered, but we were the radio station that really supported a lot of these artists. So like your Burna Boy. So he was like part of our family before he, you know, blew up and started doing amazing things. Wizkid as well, Tiwa Savage. So all of these artists that are now doing amazing things on a, you know, global level, they kind of started with us.
That's what's up. Ebro.
Yes. My journey started in 1990 in Northern California. I was born in Oakland, Berkeley. And then my parents split up. My mom lived in Sacramento, and I got an internship when I was 15 in high school. Started DJing and, you know, working the street teams and all of that. And I've been in radio ever since, whether it's on the programming side or the on-air side. You know, worked my way up through the ranks, eventually becoming vice president here in New York City over all Kiss FM, Hot 97. That was back when smooth jazz was still on the radio. And then I stepped out of the corporate side back into the on-air side around 2012 because I saw the business changing more or less. And then I made a move with Apple once they acquired Beats Music. And we started doing radio into phones around the world. And now I'm a global director for Apple Music for hip hop and R&B, covering off all of the editorial stuff, playlists, some original content, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been in this more time now than not. Since I've been doing it since I was 15 years old. So
Wow.
15. Tuma.
My name is Tuma. I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Back then it was called Zaire. We moved to the States when I was 5. My dad was going to school in the US. When he finished school, we moved to Zimbabwe. So I spent all my teenage years in Zimbabwe, age 13 to age 19. I did a year and a half of college in Zimbabwe, transferred to the States, and then stayed. And even my parents, they even moved back to the States as well. And in Zimbabwe, I try to be a rapper and try to call myself B Tuma B. I used to get spins on ZBC Radio 3, right? And then when I got back to the States, I realized like it just wasn't going to work, so, right? It just wasn't happening. So B Tuma B, nobody cared, and I stopped caring about. So what happened was I started looking into what kind of work happened behind the scenes. So in 1997, I took a bus from Iowa City to New York City, and because I was going to school in Iowa City, and got an internship with a guy named Theo Settlemeyer, right? And he was just starting up as a lawyer at the time, because I told my parents I was going to be an entertainment lawyer. And then went back to graduate, and then was able to get another internship with BET, and discovered things like music programming there. And BET moved to New York. In 2000, a show called 106 in Park started, so we moved to East Harlem. And from there, in 2002, MTV, and we worked on all the hip hop stuff on MTV for 10 years. For 10 years at MTV, and then Revolt, and then Spotify, and now YouTube. And that's me. Yeah. Well, that's my career journey. That's not me. That's my career journey.
Gotcha. So then you just recently went to Nigeria with Lior, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to Nigeria a few times. Last year we went with Lior and everything. Tools we even hosted some stuff together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, Nigeria is one of the most populated countries on the continent. Obviously, YouTube wants to be there. But while you're establishing YouTube there, what are some of the hurdles you've encountered?
So YouTube is really big in Nigeria, like really, really big. And the artists like have PhDs in YouTube. In comparison to other countries, they really know YouTube. Even when we did a workshop with the artists, some were telling us stuff, and we had a few of the product guys there, and their eyes were wide open, like, what? Oh, really? Oh, like it was that type of detail and understanding and knowledge and proficiency. And one of the but now YouTube Music, the standalone music subscription app, launched this year in Nigeria. One of the biggest challenges for that was licensing. It was the licensing infrastructure was so fragmented, and it took quite a while, and it was a challenge, and it was a very deliberate, conscious decision to launch in Nigeria, knowing these challenges, but it was worthwhile because it'll help when it comes to other similar economies that have similar publishing or lack of publishing infrastructure. Yeah.
Last week we did an episode about film and television, and there's not a structure for getting royalties, etc. So Ebro, when you just did a documentary, right, in South Africa?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the intentions of Apple, and how are you guys plan on what are the goals of the continent?
I mean, it's basically to give people access to music, and obviously help the artists that are creating music. So, I think on the technology side, South Africa, we have a hub there for Apple. So that's it was in support of the team down in South Africa, because they already have stores and retail and things like that out there for Apple. But the next phase has been making sure that African nations don't have to switch to a U.S. currency. So because of the way Apple is set up, you could only use Apple Music in some countries if you had a U.S. bank account or a U.S. credit card. So they've made sure that in Jamaica, in DR, in countries in South America, in Africa, some nations in Asia that just came on, now their currency is supported on the Apple platform. So that way it doesn't require the individuals to have a US credit card account, and they can just jump on and use Apple Music. So it was just a matter of the technology catching up on the Apple side to support allowing people to not, to use their currency in their nations.
Okay.
And really that's, for us, it's, just like any other platform, supporting the creative community, supporting the artist community, and making sure the consumer and the artist can connect.
Is there a royalty plan there that's been designed for people?
Well, yeah, obviously, if you're an artist and you set up, your platform, or you set up your music, that goes directly through how you got it put onto the platform. So whether or not you come through a record label, if you come through independently, and let's say you use, I don't know, CD Baby, or you use TuneCore, or you use any of these platforms, that money, your streaming royalties, should go straight to you.
Edu, excuse me, though.
There you go.
Audiences enjoy a disproportionate amount of crossover success, right? As compared to East or South Africa. So how do you guys manage that landscape?
Well, if you had to go back in time, and I think the same thing happened with hip hop, where New York was banging, and then the South decided to step up, and it was their time. There was a time when we used to listen to Congolese music only, and Congolese artists would travel across Africa and perform. Then when it went to South Africa, and now the buzz is with Nigeria. So what I try to do myself on my show, I don't just focus on Nigeria. I focus on all the 53 and a half African countries. I say 53 and a half because South Sudan is sometimes Sudan and sometimes not. So yeah, so I try to concentrate on those. And in the 15 years, I've made relationships with DJs, with producers, with radio personalities. So I have a good network. And also the diaspora, because there's Portuguese and French-speaking people from those parts of Africa that speak those languages, and they connect, because Brazilians think I'm Brazilian because Edu is Eduardo. So I get a lot of love from there. And Edu is also Ghanaian, and he's also Nigerian, he's also Angolan. So my name as well is very unique because it sits in all those places. And just, I think because I've been there for such a long time and been connecting with them for a while, it's become easy to set up that network. But most people will listen to their music in Africa, because Kenya has a scene, Zambia has a scene, South Africa has different scenes and pockets of scenes. And it's just that Afrobeats now is really popular, and that's what people are resonating to. And I think the audiences now are more clubby, they're more fun. I mean, a nice R&B track from South Africa wouldn't get the same love as a funky record or, an upbeat record by Wizkid, just because it doesn't look good on your TikTok video, So it's just, I think, young people are adapting to what's happening now, and that's why Nigerian music, which is very upbeat and very club friendly, is making the most noise.
What advice would you give to an artist, either established or up and coming, from the States, who wants to establish a presence in Africa? Like how would one go about that?
The advantage that America and the UK and most of the Western world has is the PR game is really good, because a lot of people in Africa, even Tools will tell you, as much as we pay attention to African music, we pay attention to what's happening globally, because there's availability of charts, there's playlists, there's Apple's, you know, YouTube, and there's all these things. So as much as we consume African music, we also do consume other sorts of music. And it's much easier for an artist to come into because you will always find pockets of people who love that music. I mean, Erykah Badu came to Kenya and she had 7,000 to 10,000 people. And you'd be like, Erykah Badu? And you're like, yeah, those things do work. Like neo-soul artists and people like that will actually attract, because there's a crowd there. And remember, it's 1 billion people on that continent. So there's enough, I mean, for us to all share. But if you want to come in, you don't literally have to do a collaboration. There are Roots fans right now in Kenya. Yeah. There's rock, there's kids who are, you know, piercing their noses and their eyes and their ears. Rock fans, they love them. I mean, if Nirvana went to Kenya, they would easily fill out a stadium, because there's people who are hungry for that music and they love it just as much.
Can you speak to how an artist can break in Nigeria? Nigeria is like run its own, you know, they self-enclosed. They don't need nobody else. There's so many people there. So how do you get put on your plate?
Sort of kind of back to what Edu said. So although we love Nigerian music, we love everything about Nigerian music, we're still very clued into what's going on all over the world. So if you've been to Nigeria, if you know quite a few things about Nigerians, you know that December, for example, we always call it Dirty December. So Dirty December, especially in Lagos, it's crazy. You have lots of different events, and you have lots of international artists, you know, that come through. Last year alone, we had Cardi B, we had Meg Thee Stallion, we had Future. So, and these people, they draw crowds. So obviously, you know, Nigerians, we do know about them. We do love their music as well. I would say that if you're really trying to break into the Nigerian market, Nigerians like to see you. They like to see you in person. So I've had conversations with several actually African artists who are based abroad, and they're trying to figure out how to break into the Nigerian market. And I'm like, well, you know what? You can send me music to play. I can play. It could be a good song. But in terms of, you know, really connecting with the Nigerian audience, they need to see you. They need to see you go to their favorite restaurant. They need to see you go to, you know, one of the hot places or one of the hot clubs in Nigeria. And I'm going to use Cardi B as an example. So obviously a lot of people here know Cardi B, not every single person, but the fact that she came to Lagos and she completely embraced everything about Nigeria. She went to our strip clubs, she went to, you know, she went to very, very, they didn't know that place. That's Cardi B. Oh my gosh. And then the next thing, they start following her a bit more because they feel that she's kind of, you know, almost like paid tribute to our country. So that's very, very important for Nigerians. So once you've kind of done that, then they're more accepting of you. That's my opinion.
Similar in New York. That's New York, Philly. That's the streets of America. Like, you know, they might like your song, but they're not checking for you like that unless you come through, pull up, and they can see you.
Yep, absolutely. So you kind of they need to see your face. They need to kind of see you on their turf, and then it becomes a little bit easier.
See. And so, Ebro, you feel like that also applies for artists from Africa trying to, you know, establish presence in states?
Absolutely.
Like what boxes do they have to check?
I think, you know, there's the club scene, you know, and I can speak for New York City specifically, and there's some parties going on in LA that have embraced the Afrobeat music and music from, you know, the Caribbean, and, you know, a lot of what happened in New York City, you know, the dance hall Caribbean spaces started playing the Afrobeat records because a lot of the Nigerian kids and the Ghanaian kids and the African kids was going to Caribbean parties, right? And, you know, the roots of Caribbean music clearly and sonically are from Africa. The roots of all of our music is in Africa. So it was just a matter of those worlds coming together. And then there were also, you know, Afrobeat parties that started to happen in New York City. that were then bringing in some of the reggae DJs. So those worlds started to come together in a very Pan-African way and in a very loving way. And then the records just started to become popular in multiple parties. You even had the Spanish kids who normally dance and love, the reggaeton music or even merengue and salsa. They started playing some of the dance hall records. And anybody that came up in New York in the 90s, you know that when you went to the hip hop parties, they played dance hall records, and the Spanish kids and the black kids and the Caribbean kids all loved reggae music together. Well, Afrobeat kind of started being the same way, where it was being played in all the different parties. The parties started coming together. So I think for the artists, that are coming from, whether it's from the UK or from Africa, and even the Caribbean kids that are, coming from Jamaica, a lot of times they come in through those parties. Their records get popular in those parties, and then they start to branch out. So it's just, I think it's a matter of, just like Tool said, going to the right spaces, embracing the right cultures and the right moments, and being here in New York City to do so and spend some time. New York is a tough place to break into. I know Atlanta has a scene. DC also has a great scene. Houston has a great, African scene as well. So there's multiple places in America that you should probably spend some time, going to visit and spending real time too. Like, I know I had talked to Stormzy, who was, really trying to, find his footing in the United States before the pandemic hit. And he was telling me he was thinking about moving to New York City, and thought, that back in the day as an MC, right? Even as an MC from America, there were cats that moved from, the Bay Area to New York, or Chicago to New York, or moved, like Tuma was saying earlier, moving to LA and living in LA for a little while and really embracing the scene and being seen and collaborating with other artists.
Oh, absolutely. We moved at one point to to New York. We lived in East Harlem for a second before 106 and Park was there. And that was for the purposes of creating, establishing a presence. But before then, we moved to UK and we lived in London for almost a year while we were sort of, creating our presence in UK and in Europe. So yeah, I definitely get that,
And these are things that artists have done, for Jimi Hendrix moved to, London back in the day. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Bob Marley moved to London back in the day. Like, this is something that artists have done for generations to, like you said, make your presence felt, feel the culture and connect with people. And I encourage, when artists can travel. And look, now for younger artists, you have the YouTube and you have TikTok, or you have Instagram or Twitter, and you can build followings. You also have the tools now where you can go in and look at the metrics and see where you're interacting with people in different places and create relationships in different places, and start building your footing. But as a creative and as an artist, part of the job is to go connect with people in a real way, in their spaces, so that they can, create it, so that you could create a deeper relationship.
I feel that it's, I could be wrong. Please do, if anybody disagrees with me, please correct me. But I feel that it's actually been harder for Nigerian African artists to break into the States than in the UK. I don't know if you do agree with me, Edu. I do feel that a lot of our artists are kind of more, they've been a bit more accepted in the UK than in the States, because it just seems to be a very, very tough battle to actually break into the States and, have a recognized name. So I don't know if you do see my point, if you agree with me, Edu.
In the UK, I think because the UK is kind of central and you have so many cultures here. So it's easier to break here because there'll be so many people from so many different places who can accept and who feel or know your music. And that means you have friends who are from other communities who will introduce you to jollof rice, to Afrobeats, to this and that. So I think that closeness, and London is very small. The UK is very small and tight. There's 64 million people on a place that even smaller than some states in America. So I think we are so close to each other that you always feel the energy of what's going on. Your neighbor will be playing some Spanish music and like, yeah, what's that? When you meet them the next time, you're like, what was that? It was a really nice song. They invite you to a party and you're hooked. You know, you're doing salsa dances, you're doing kizomba dances. So I think the UK was a better springboard for people to become bigger here, and it opened up Europe for them. I think
Well,
America
and I throw
is
on top of that, Edu, and just so you understand, America is culturally inept in many ways. And it's a part of the ignorance has permeated even the individuals who think that they're culturally aware. And so when it comes to even opening your mind up to the world outside of America, it is a heavy undertaking. And New York City is not America. LA is not really America. And so you can be big in New York and people in Missouri don't know you from a can of paint.
And they don't care.
You know what I mean? And they don't care. You know how many Jamaican artists are on fire in New York and they can't sell a shoestring in Nevada. You know what I mean? Nobody's showing up. Jay-Z sells out 9 days in Brooklyn. Bang, bang, bang. You turn on the radio in Las Vegas, I heard them giving away Jay-Z tickets for free in Las Vegas. Jay-Z. Jay-Z. And Black Thought to tell you, I'm sure Black Thought and them toured the world for 10 months a year for 20 years or something, didn't y'all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Yo, he'll tell you the Roots will sell out 5 shows in New York and travel to Ohio and do a smaller venue.
Yeah.
For sure.
You definitely have to keep up appearances. You have to keep up appearances, and it's about establishing yourself in each individual market, relative to that market, man. And if they haven't seen you for a long time, or if they feel like you haven't checked for them, then it's almost like you start from ground zero. It's almost like start from scratch again, So that's why we toured so extensively, so we could maintain visibility sort of everywhere all at once. And by the time you've done one world run, the people wherever you started are like, yo, what's up? It's been a while since y'all been here, and it's time to get back over to Australia or Japan or UK or whatever. So yeah, that's how we move, man.
Can I add to what both of them just said? And you guys addressed the ethnocentricity, where America looks at things just from the American point of view, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Americans have too many choices. Music to Americans is like cereal at the grocery store in America, right? There are too many choices. So what happens is, if you don't break through here, I always tell artists, by the way, Tools, African artists do better in America than the UK artists have done so far. It's I'm not even thinking. And I'll tell you what the issue is. No. It's a struggle for everybody. It's a struggle for American artists because they're competing with the attention economy here. It's like oversaturated. There's so many choices. So what happens is this, and when you're talking about going in those home markets, you're also competing with the local popularity of the go-go band in DC who's hot, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is this. So what happens is one of the things I always tell artists from overseas is you have to physically be here to compete. You have to do a summer jam in Hot 97 in order for the tri-state area to even register that you're top tier in New York. You have to do a birthday bash in Atlanta. You have to physically be present to promote, to even have a shot at competing, because there are so many choices, and it's a listeners market in America, right? And they're not looking. That's the thing. They're not looking. Well, for us, we're talking stories about getting Congolese DVDs, et cetera, or when we were in Africa, you have to go look for your music. They don't have to look. And they have so many choices and so many forms of entertainment. So what happens is this. So if you're not physically present right now, at least, maybe they'll change in the future. You're not going to break through the...
Well, Tuma, the reason I started with the ignorance and the ethnocentricity is because it's a different mindset of the arts in America. the appreciation for the arts in America is not the same as it is, at least in my impression, as it seems to be in
Any
Europe,
place.
or even in the UK or London.
No, it isn't.
Like, there's a higher appreciation and respect for the arts. In America, it's all commoditized and it's capitalism. It's all there's definitely a segment of the population that loves the arts. But there's a larger segment of the 340 million people in America that honestly, they're just consumers, and they're not consuming based on what is culturally awakening, what is culturally fulfilling. They are just buying shit that's popular.
They're consuming on conformism. Is they're hopping on a bandwagon or whatever. This is what everyone else is listening to. If I can't go sit at my cafeteria table at my high school, I won't be accepted if I don't know what's up with that cafeteria table.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's conformism. Exactly. It's simple as that. Otherwise, the dynamics of the high school cafeterias in the States or whatever. I did 7th grade here. I moved to Zimbabwe when I was in the first month of the 8th grade. And I remember those little things, those in-crowd type of nuances, et cetera, You are out of your circles here if you don't know what's up. Gone. Even in music industry circles, ask Ebro. Is if you're not even hip to whatever, they don't even like pow.
So back in the sort of, was it early to mid 2000s, I felt that, I mean, I've been to America, I haven't lived there. So like I said, these are just my observations, but I did feel that America seemed to be more welcoming of the, Caribbean artists, because there was a time that Sean Paul was everywhere in America. Well, he was everywhere. He was doing everything.
Traditionally, we have been, I feel like traditionally, the artists from the Caribbean have been able to break here in States.
Listen, let's keep it 100. Sean Paul's my boy. Sean Paul was so popular because, A, he's talented. He sounds great. He spoke a lot of English, though. There was a lot of clear things that you could understand in what he was saying. There's a lot of English, and he was light-skinned.
Yeah. Nah, that's real.
No, that's real.
That's why Ebro's popular.
Yes. You know what's so funny? Somebody told me that last week. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. But that's actually quite interesting.
Well, can I say something interesting that to support what he just said is, I went to Nashville 2 years ago. I was working at Spotify when we spent a whole week in Nashville, immersed in the country music industry. Right? It was a part of Offsite, and there was a artist. I think it was named Kane Brown, and he was like very light skinned
artist, mixed kid, light skinned kid.
Yeah, his early, if I remember correctly, his early audience outside of the United States was like in Brazil. It was like Brazil teenage girls, right? and one of the things I came out with was that those girls who have no context of what country music is, et cetera, they may fantasize him as that guy that their parents would accept.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? As like, okay, he can be my husband or my boyfriend, and my parents would accept that. Like, just think of an obedient teenage girl. Obedient, that's the key word, right? Who doesn't want, is okay. So what happens is there's a big element of that, because Sean Paul also translated to like Latin artists, Latin world. There's theories about Obama.
Colorism is very prevalent in the Latin American and South America. All that colorism is big, and in America it's big.
Big everywhere.
Slave culture, period.
Yeah, it's big everywhere, and that racial ambiguity sometimes is the ticket, and that's the that's the deciding factor for some folks. You know what I mean? So you have to be.
I just feel that there's something. Go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say in the 90s, right? So in the 90s, there was in late 80s and 90s in hip hop and R&B in America. Reggae music, Shabba Ranks, these things have been a part of the hip hop scene, right? Caribbean music has always been a part of that hip hop scene. as the hip hop scene went more mainstream, right? Because in the 90s, there was what, 2 hip hop radio stations that played. There was one in New York, one in LA, and then KMEL in San Francisco that played rap music all day. Outside of those 3 radio stations in the 90s, no other radio stations in the country played rap music during the day.
Right.
Right. Oh, and GCI in DC, I think was playing.
And Chicago.
I mean, not GCI, PGC. PGC in DC. And so it was more of our community, Black community. Caribbean music was woven into that energy. Dancehall is a cousin of hip hop, so it was in there in the 90s. I think what has happened is, as you fast forward to now, you have people co-opting dancehall. So you had reggaeton came on and started basically making Spanish dancehall, because that's what reggaeton is. It's dancehall in Spanish, like El General when he came on. It's just dancehall. It's just in Spanish. It's different language. And so you had it started to fragment a little bit and started to go into its own little pockets. And where we sit now is you have radio stations like a Hot 97 in New York playing the most popular of popular. And then when it gets cultural and gets into the dance hall shows or the reggaeton shows, or we're playing Afro beats, those are in the off hours. And then oftentimes that music makes its way into the mainstream. But it's not like you don't have as many clubs in New York where people can go out and celebrate music together, right? And that was another thing that happened culturally in New York, is the club scene went away. They shut the clubs down. So a lot of the music that depends on the clubs for an experience is struggling right now. So what's popular? Strip club music. You know why? Strip clubs didn't go away. So people still to this day gather at strip clubs, or the girls on the Instagram doing their thing, dancing on Instagram, they set music to it, and that's the music that's popular. Just like now you got TikTok music that's popular, because what's popular right now?
Back in the day, ringtone music. Remember ringtone music?
Ringtone rap.
Wait. I have to go back on the Sean Paul thing, because what happened also with Sean Paul is what's happened with Afro beats, is the power of the diaspora. The Caribbean diaspora at that time was very, very places in like Brooklyn, Toronto, etc. And I'm just going from my point of view, right? Is Sean Paul wasn't even the hottest in Jamaica at the time, right? But what happened was he was getting give me the light is the last at all.
Make it clear, all that, make it clap, all that.
So that was.
But he was going. But what he was doing was he was going to parties in New York City. He was showing up at mad dances in New York City.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. No, 100%. But this is the deal. Is this? But if you remember, Ebro, if you remember something, it was a coalition, because I remember very clearly there was a VP Records, and VP Records had a lot of hot artists at the time, right?
Yeah.
In terms of boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, etc. But guys like Little X, right? People like Tanisha Scott, Toronto, who did the choreography.
Toronto was heavy.
Yeah, exactly. Then they came to like it was myself and Butterman at MTV at the time, and we were like 100%. Let's do this, because I was at BET and we played Deport Them. Yeah, it was Deport Them.
Deport Them was the first thing.
It was like a split. It was Bom Chile, right? But it was like we played like in the middle of the night, like once or twice. Like it was a spike. It wasn't even like rotation. It was like spikes, right? But what happens is all of a sudden you had champions who would go beyond the extra thing. I remember fighting in those meetings, et cetera, because it was getting played on a Hot 97, because the Brooklyns and all them, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is the Caribbean diaspora were championing it very, very, very much, and they were strong, and it was still fresh in terms of generational. It was still one generation away, right? Same thing with the Afro beats and the Nigerian music, etc. And me and Edu had this conversation in London. Why maybe, let's say, a Tanzanian like a bongo flavor or music from Kenya or may not travel as far as the Nigerian music when it's just as popular on the continent or certain parts of the continent. It is the championing of the diaspora. So in England, you still have that fresh second generation excited, like excited. It's not third generation, It's not. It's Biggie and them doing "Darling My Baby" with saying Puff, let's go do "Darling My Baby" with Supercat, right? Because my mom is Jamaican. I go to Jamaica every summer. It's not Biggie's kids who are a little bit removed, right? Who a generation removed. So what happened with Afrobeats now? It happened with dancehall more. They just had a little bit more established, and they could do traditions. What's the thing you guys do, Ebro? Every West Indian Day parade. I went to the one.
The reggae show that we do.
Yeah, that's a tradition now. The West Indian Day parade is a tradition now. It's established now. There's
and you know, last year, I brought Afro B. I brought Tiwa Savage to the reggae show. And it was like, yo, we was celebrating Africa at the reggae show because I wanted those cultures to see each other and party with each other. You know what I mean? Because there's not like there's the African American parade in Harlem every year, but there's not like an African diaspora parade. And really the diaspora shows up on Labor Day because you got Haitians, you got Bahamians, you got people from the Virgin Islands, Jamaicans, everybody shows up to the West Indian Day parade.
And it's established. It's big. And, but
there's a million people out there.
Yeah, millions.
I just sort of feel that the people really haven't realized and appreciated the power of Africans in the diaspora. There's something, I don't know if you guys know about One Africa Music Fest. Somebody that I know here, he does that. And one of the best shows that I went to was in London last year. And what was crazy is obviously it's really predominantly about African artists, but Wyclef performed. And it was fantastic. So what he has been able to do, his name is Paul, what he's been able to do is basically bring together Africans from different countries who are all over the world. So they have the show in London, they did New York, they do Dubai. And
they do Brooklyn every year too.
Yeah, so I just feel that we as Africans, one thing we have, there's a lot of us, we have lots of numbers, and I just feel that that's not tapped into. When I look at the record labels, for example, yes, they're signing artists, Nigerian artists, African artists, but then I don't know how much they really, really understand. I'm not seeing them doing. Does anybody remember? What's it called? Def Jam. It was in 2003. Where they basically brought together like, artists from the Caribbean and American artists, and they did this collaborative album. That for me, I remember when I saw it and I looked at the track listing, I was like, this is so incredible. This is so amazing. And I would love to see, some organization basically do something like that with African artists, not just Nigerian artists, but African artists, because I think that would be crazy. That would actually be crazy.
The other piece I want just for, the viewers to understand is also in America, a lot of it is about language, right? And the amount of English, like David O's success in America, when you listen to those records, is a lot of English. Like those records that really went far is a lot of English. You'll hear, this is how crazy Americans are. Well, I was just going to say, this is how crazy Americans are. Americans will tell you they don't understand what a rapper from London is saying.
It's hard. Sometimes it's hard.
I didn't understand what Sean Paul was saying half the time, but I still love the music.
Well, yeah, but you're a music lover.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a passive music, fan who don't. They'll tell you, like, I don't know what he's saying. It's like, he's speaking English.
Like, why are they speaking in English, man? I don't understand that kind of English.
Wait. But I have a theory. Do you remember the Davido Fall blew up in America, and If is a much better record. If is a much better record. It's a beautiful record, and was even newer, but somehow Fall. And then after thinking about it, it was I Don't Want to Be a Player No More. Made it familiar. I don't want to be a player no more. That part. So what happens is all of a sudden I didn't feel it didn't
alienated.
Yeah, exactly.
Like an outsider.
Yeah, exactly. So when that part comes on, I can sing along. I can go with it. So what happens is,
why do you, sorry to interrupt, so but why would you say records like Despacito, for example, are popular outside of the Latin American community? Because I don't know what they were talking about.
In America, there's mad people that speak Spanish. Spanish is basically the second language of America.
Yeah, especially the Southwest, especially in the Southwest.
Yeah.
It's the same way with K-pop.
Because I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people that don't speak Spanish, but they were singing along.
But there are stages. It starts with the Spanish, and then when it gets to the remix, the people.
Well, then Justin Bieber jumps on it, and it's like, all right,
they get on the record way later than the Spanish speaking or the people who are very.
So basically, our artists need to incorporate more English into their songs.
Well, it's not just English.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait. You guys remember? Okay, here I'll give you a case study. Right, in 1998, WHUR, which is an adult contemporary station, started playing Le Nubian Makeda. Right, right. Le Nubian Makeda. It was a French record, beautiful R&B. It was like high octane records through Virgin, etc. And my boss at the time, his name was Greg Diggs at BET, and because BET was in DC. Noticed like, hey, this record is actually getting played. It's an R&B record. It was all in French. It got played. They even ended up getting like a budget for a push, Le Nubian. And what happened was the record became somewhat popular, and it actually charted at the time. Only Boyz II Men's Feliz Navidad and Manu Dibango, Soma Cosa, foreign language records on the R&B charts, right? There was that time, those were the only two records that even entered the charts. So it was almost a case study that if there's enough people who can put that as the foreign language part aside, that it's possible.
I think that, Tuma, there will always be outliers. There will always be outliers. I don't want, this is me personally as a fan of African music. I personally do not want the music to become this chase to try to make America accept it.
Right.
That's my personal, I don't want that. I want the music to remain authentic, and the joints that cross over to everybody else, cool. But the preservation of the energy that is present right now, and artists having a community and a collective that supports them and can support them on the way up the charts. I'm more interested in that base remaining authentic and people coming to the music, not the music trying to necessarily reach out. I'm sure there's going to be outliers. I'm sure there's going to be artists that cross over. But just like my love for Caribbean music or even hip hop, like I'm not a fan of hip hop that purposefully reaches out like this is my radio song. Like I hate when an artist says that. Like that's one of my biggest pet peeves.
But guess what's happening in hip hop? Guess what's happening in hip hop? But guess what's happening in hip hop? And might actually open the door is what they were calling mumble rap like 2 years ago, right? Where you couldn't decipher what the artist was saying, right? It is, in my mind, I was like, oh, that's good because that means foreign language. Maybe now they're
now you can open up.
For friends.
How does the responsibility of everyone's platform, of YouTube, Apple Music, regular radio, how does that change in a climate where there are no clubs or parades or strip clubs or any of that shit? You know what I mean?
I mean, for me, it's just been about bringing the party to the radio as often as possible. Yesterday, we've been celebrating Africa Month. Yesterday, we had Cuppy on my show doing an hour from Nigeria. So it's just for Haitian Flag Day in a couple of weeks, on the 18th, I'm gonna have a kid on doing, playing some compa and zouk and different things. So it's always just about bringing the party and the good energy as frequently as possible. And, everybody's jumping on IG Live or, Zoom and doing these virtual things. So, YouTube, doing whatever they can, YouTube live streams and all that.
Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot more records coming from TikTok, like way more. That's the up-tempo records are gonna come from social media because the clubs are shut down. We don't have that the grassroots kind of base or groundswell. So that's it's gonna be very interesting if music slows down for the next 5 years as a result of this quarantining. You know, maybe
the TikTok challenge is the new dance at the club. Everybody doing the same dance together.
Yeah.
For me in the UK, what's happening is because the BBC is kind of like funded by the public, and loads of young kids and loads of the BBC kind of personalities are not on TikTok, or they're not popular stars on YouTube, or they're not famous. So some of the shows that we do that play music that caters to the youth becomes a route to be able to pass on the information that the government is passing on, because they're not sitting there waiting to hear what the Prime Minister is saying. So we've been added on like a bit of more responsibility to be able to pass down information to young people who might not listen to what's going on, even listen to their parents, but they listen to their favorite DJ, and we're giving out information, be like, yo, stay safe, stay home, this thing is real, you know, little things like that, not in a condescending way, but we're able to connect with young people more than, you know, regular TV. That's how radio is working for me at the moment, really connecting with people and being able to pass on messages, because it's not just a playlist. They're listening to somebody who's talking to them at the time and keeping people company when they're stranded at home at this time.
We are about keeping people company and also providing, should I say, a kind of route for escapism. Because right now, you know, Nigeria, our numbers are probably about to get crazy. So lots of people are worried, lots of people are scared. Not everyone has gone back to work, even though the lockdown has been, you know, sort of relaxed. So I feel that as radio people, we really focus on providing escapism. So playing great music, and as well as educating people. So there's so many different genres, and this is part of my passion as a radio presenter as well. When I was working at MTV, so in London, our office was in Camden, and we had TVs all over the place, and we'd watch, you know, different people would be watching different MTV channels. Initially, I was always into, like, you know, hip hop. I love that. And I was sitting with a group of people that weren't really into hip hop. And for me, it was just very, very foreign at first, because I was thinking, I don't know any of these people. So they would constantly watch MTV2, which is sort of like the rock, the alternative, the indie kind of sound. And I ended up loving those kind of songs. I ended up loving those artists, like, you know, Athlete and a whole bunch of other artists. So for me, I feel that there's if you're on radio, you have a very, very strong responsibility to educate people as well. So if you have people that are just, you know, constantly listening to a certain genre, as much as you can, try and introduce other things to them, because that is the way. I think that's the best way to make sure that great artists are recognized for their talent and their work. And it also, I believe, allows artists to, you know, be original, to stick to what's, you know, true to them. So I'm definitely passionate about that. And right now, you know, this is like the perfect time to do that, to just kind of say, I know you love your David O, I know you love this, but have you heard this person? And just give them different things to listen to.
How hard is it to, you know, to go against what's trending, or to, you know, to present music to, you know, your audience before it becomes popular? For
example, Mafiki Zolo from South Africa, they had this amazing song called Kona. We didn't know what they were talking about. The first time I heard that, I was like, there's something so special about this song. First time I played it on radio, people weren't crazy about it, but then I just kept at it. So you just have to find the right opportunity to just say, I'm going to get back to what you love, but just listen to this very quickly. And then it grew and it grew and it grew. They were in Lagos almost every month, every other month, so big. The Nigerian audience, you have to just get them at the right time, because sometimes you can try and introduce something and it just completely falls flat. But there are other times you might have a few people that are like, that song that you played, what is that? Oh, can you play that again? So you just have to keep trying. But I would say that things have definitely changed now, because there's so many other genres that are now sort of, you know, quite popular. Back in the day, like rock was never really like a big thing. The alternative, you know, sound wasn't really like a big thing. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing those genres kind of play a bigger part in the music industry. And then we're also seeing a fusion of those genres. So you have like, you know, the rock and the African sound, and it's just amazing. And one of the, I think this is probably going to be the next genre that's going to like be massive. It's called alter, and that means alternative. So it's kind of like still heavy with the African sound, but very, very like chilled out, you know, laid back. It's kind of it's sort of like the kind of music that you'd listen to if you had, you know, those kind of old school Cadillacs that are really wide. Really wide. And you're just like driving, the weather's cool, you're just driving. So that's the kind of music you'd listen to. So that's about to be very big.
Odunsi and Santi and those guys, it's very like, they got some hip hop dudes in that zone too. They got, it's very like, it's soulful. It's chill. It's still, some of it's still upbeat, but it feels very lo-fi also. It kind of falls into that lo-fi R&B zone. You know what I mean? It's not overly produced.
Hey, bro, that's what we call alter. So that's like, it means alternative. So Odunsi, Santi, Bodge, a whole bunch of other people, that's like alter, and that's like the new sound that's like coming up, and it's still very African, but it's just like super, super chilled, not as high tempo as the songs that you'd hear like, you know, in the club and everything, but it's definitely, you know, getting more popular.
Ebro, when we get to go back outside again, I'm going to start back up my tour routing on the continent. So how can Apple be a part of that?
I mean, honestly, just figuring out a way for us to do some curation around what you're doing. You know, one of the big challenges that we have to confront as Apple is the ways that we interface with local communities, right? Tours are while they're national, they're also very local, right? So, you know, I think it would just be about what artist is it, and in what ways can we highlight it in the right regions to bring that artist to the forefront. Let's discuss it and figure out what that looks like.
I know Nigeria often has really, really large concerts, and part of my touring strategy was to get it into a smaller zone, which I think COVID is probably going to allow for now. As a woman, I want to know what type of struggles you may or may not have, or how you traverse the landscape, particularly in Nigeria, in particular on the continent, when you're, you know, addressing a situation as far as promoter being a male-dominated industry?
Well, obviously, Nigeria as a whole is still, a lot of the industries are still very, you know, heavily, you know, dominated by males. So quite often you probably don't get taken as seriously as you should be taken if you're a woman. I mean, I know people that I know some women that are MDs of their companies, and when they go for meetings, they sometimes have to pretend like they're, you know, the secretary or something, and let somebody else, you know, be the lead, which for me obviously is crap, because, you know, you can't just look at somebody and just say, okay, because you're a woman, I'm gonna, you know, doubt your capabilities. Things are gradually changing. Right now we've got a few more women, you know, in the entertainment industry, but we could definitely do with a lot more. One of the other things that I'm quite passionate about is getting more, you know, female artists in the industry. When I first started back in 2009, the concerts that you'd actually see in Nigeria, they would give the headline artist, and you would not have one woman. You wouldn't have one woman. So you'd have like these concerts, and all you would see or all you would hear are just male artists. And then things gradually changed. Tiwa Savage was one of the, you know, should I say first, one of the group of like, you know, first group of female artists that basically kind of started pushing through. So when she started out, when she kind of made it big, you'd have a lot of these shows, again, very, very, you know, male dominated, and Tiwa would be the only female artist. So as a whole, I think, you know, our industry is still quite, you know, male dominated. Things are changing, but we can do a lot better. We can definitely do a lot better.
When Tools was talking about the artists trying to make it big in the UK and in the States, I think there's a very big thing that the artists from Africa miss out on, and that's education. Going into a landscape, you need to know what you're going into, and learning the structures, the way the labels are set up, the way the promotions are set, because everything is different in Africa. Those structures are different because it's a jungle. That's what, you know.
They're not really Universal, there, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When people from YouTube, you see from YouTube, Universal, before they set up shop in Nigeria, they do send scouts to check and see, okay, what's the landscape? How do people respond to this? What do we need to set up? But they come as kings from their backyard and expect to just pick up and start where they left off in another place, because they can see, oh, people in London are dancing to my music, because they're following, you know, what they can see on their Instagram and stuff like that. And I think educating yourself about the systems that are in place in different places is very important. It's the same way when an American artist comes to the UK, you know, when the Roots are coming to the UK, you guys came and stayed for a year to learn how, you know, learn the culture, understand. So I think a part of that is also needed by the artists to just understand, because giving you an example, Ibra was saying earlier about UK artists, even in the UK right now, the UK is really small and is very controlled. So we do have many artists, but at a certain time, there's only very few Black artists who are given a time to shine. If you look at it will be Dizzy Rascal. Once Dizzy Rascal is finished, it's Stormzy. When Stormzy is done, it's Dave. So it's always pockets, So, and those guys are competing with the African artists. And the label is looking at them and looking at this African kid, I'm signing him. Is he going to be able, am I going to be able to recoup my money? Because it's like a mortgage. Am I going to be able to get my money that I invest in this kid back? Or is it better to invest in a Dave who already has friends here? You know, there's lots of people who know him from different cultures, and we can make money off of them. And that's why a lot of the African artists, though they're signed, they are competing with local kids from here who are already established. They have friends from uni. They've been doing, you know, they've been grinding from time. So they see it as their big artists coming into the scene when they're actually not. You're beginning. I think it's a mindset. You really need to change it and just come in knowing that you're new here and you start from the bottom, building up.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of Mr. Easy, because he basically studied the whole business of the industry. He realized that, okay, just because a record label wants to sign you, it doesn't mean you're about to be a superstar. There's so many different things. There's so many other elements. And the last time I spoke to him, one of the things that he said that I absolutely loved was that he was signing deals on a project basis. So it wasn't like a whole album. It was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give this song to Universal Europe, and they're going to, you know, show me what they can do. So he just had like all these different deals. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. And quite rightly, like you said, you know, that's somebody that has obviously studied, you know, the industry, studied, you know, what he needs to do to, you know, maximize his potential as well.
You know, in sports, you have sports psychology, but in music, we don't have music psychology, right? For musicians, like, you know what I mean? Like for athletes. And why I love Mr. Easy so much, like, you know what I mean? Like, I personally get inspired, like behind the scenes, is that Mr. Easy, he doesn't have an ego. So what happens with a lot of artists is they're big overseas, and it's very difficult for them to deal with that they're not known in America, or that they don't have the same social privileges in terms of doors opening, in terms of adulation, etc. So they don't like it when they come here, right? And so one of the things I really like about Mr. Easy is when he comes, wherever he comes to a new market, I've noticed, or even a new office or new whatever, he starts from scratch. He starts with the assumption that you don't know him, and then he'll educate you. It'll be like a 101 class in college, where they know you did math all of high school and elementary school. However, they're gonna get you to the speed. Let's start from scratch. This is 101. And so the thing is this, is that's a big hard part of what you were saying, Edu, is artists who, let's say someone is big in the UK or someone big in Nigeria, when they come to, forget about New York, like what Ibro was saying, they come to a Missouri, right? They have to like literally put everything aside, start from scratch, not expect those high tier outlets to immediately support or whatever. That's it. That's all.
You have to work the market, just like we do. I'm going to do every radio show. I'm going to do this 900-seat venue, and then I'll get to the next.
You got to do that ground and pound, man. You got to do the ground and pound.
Yeah, no.
And also, Tools will know that one of the highest earning African artists to date were P Square, and they rarely went outside of Africa. They were commanding stupid money, and they never left the
Square
continent.
made so much money.
P Square was a different time. P Square, there weren't as many choices. There weren't. I mean, like that was a different time. That was you know.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
the love is at
They
home.
still did.
they were my
remixes with
neighbors.
Akon
They were
and
my
et cetera, et
neighbors a
cetera.
while
P Square was
ago.
a
Their
different time.
houses were amazing.
Yeah. Now there's a lot more competition. There's a whole lot more competition. There's a lot more market opportunity.
Right. So then, Tuma, how do you balance the directed capitalism with, you know, your own desire to uplift the culture?
Cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it? Do I like what you're saying about P Square not going overseas? Is the time me trying to break into the market gonna take away from my position, or you know what I mean, my ability to create great music because I'm spread so thin trying to get these new markets? Is it worth it, or is this the timing? Maybe this is study time. Maybe I'm not gonna try and promote and try to crack that market. I'm just gonna go visit it really quick, explore, and then when it's time, right, when the opportunity cost is not too high, I'll come back. Or when I have that record, or when there's indications that it's working, and you need me, then I'll come back. But sometimes I think people might be spending too much time here, or even chasing features here too much, because it'll take away from their core. We've seen that in hip hop and R&B so much. When people cross over, they get so big, then they price themselves out culturally.
Or their fan base ages, becomes less active, right? They become less tapped into what's happening because they're not living that same life anymore. And things shift. And if you're not doing it for authentic, organic reasons, you're just chasing chart position, radio play, and a bank account, your time will come faster than somebody who's doing it for cultural purposes and for, you know, art and fulfilling purposes. You know what I mean? Like, you could use Black Thought and the Roots, for example. You know, their trajectory as artists and creatives was to do things their way, with their sound, with their skill set. They focused on the things they could do best, which was controlling touring, continued to put out albums, continued to be authentic. Fast forward, you know, now they're on the Tonight Show. You know what I mean? Just by being authentic and being true to themselves. It's a longer, and I'm sure Thought will tell you, a harder journey.
Yeah.
And probably very, very frustrating. And it's not for the spiritually or mentally weak, but nor is anything out here if you really want to be at the highest levels of the game and be around for a long time. That's the other thing that, you know, a lot of people don't talk about is the runway, right? Like, are you trying to make consistent money over an extended period of time? Or are you trying to make a lot of money real fast and then figure out the rest later? You know, because that figure out the rest later, I know people turning 55 right now, and they made a lot of money when they was 25. They wasn't thinking that 30 years later, 40 years later. They don't have a retirement plan. They don't have health benefits, and they trying to figure it out now.
Right.
That's true.
So, you know, you have, as an artist that might be watching this, there's a lot of different blueprints and things that you can study. You can study a Jay-Z, you can study a Black Thought in the Roots. You can even study a Erykah Badu for the ladies.
Oh, that's a great study. My God.
You know, who Erykah Badu has, you know, used her creative energy, her songwriting energy, her ability to make music. You know, a lot of people don't know, Erykah Badu produced that Soul Train Awards that she hosted, was it last year or the year before? She produced that. If you're looking at what Erykah Badu is doing right this second during quarantine, she's still doing concerts, producing visual content, and encouraging her very strong base and monetizing it for $2, $3.
Right.
Successfully. And better than any other artist. So artists need to pay attention, you know, to more than just, and look, man, some human beings just care about a big paycheck, and some people care about culture and art. And somebody put up a funny meme the other day, and it was like a picture of like Mos Def, Pharoah Monch, Black Thought, Common, and it was like, these is the type of brothers that's gonna be lining up, watching the Badu Jill Scott battle on Saturday night. And it dawned on me, in looking at the photo, I also said, well, these type of brothers is the type of brothers that are still relevant right now, 20-something years later, because they were about consciousness, they were about spirituality, they were about storytelling and sharing love and sharing culture, and they're still relevant now. Talib could still tour now. Common is still doing things now. Pharoah Monch is still doing things now. Thought is still, you know what I mean? So, you can plan your career path how you want to, but there's some definite success stories out here that you as a young artist can pay attention to.
It was them hats, man.
It was the hats, man. It was the English walking hat that made it happen, man.
The New Wabians.
Yeah. And also adding to Ebro's analogy, we in Africa, I mean, RIP to Tony Allen, creator of Afrobeats, who passed away the other day. He was still touring. I mean, that kind of music that is so organic and is so energetic. These guys are going around the world still touring because it's real, it's authentic. Yeah, it's timeless.
And there's an appreciation for live performance too, I believe.
That's right.
Feel like
ability to get on that stage.
If you get Instagram or TikTok fame, which is what's happening now, I've seen some of these artists on stage. They hired me. I'm like,
can I give a shout out to a young artist real fast? I want to give a shout out to Tory Lanez, right? And the reason I want to give him a shout out is what we're seeing, what we're talking about, right? The passion, etc., the experimentation, the ability to take risks, etc. What he's doing in the live streaming world right now, whether it be Instagram or TikTok or what he just did on YouTube Live, is also showing that type of sacrifice. Because all the artists that you just named that are still relevant, they made a lot of sacrifices, deferred gratification. They're like, okay, I'm not going to make this about getting a spin on a radio or a sale on the SoundScan type of vibe when they had the opportunity. I will do this for the long run. I will make evergreen music that will stand the test of time. And I really feel like Tory Lanez is a young artist that people should actually pay attention to, as whether as a case study or as an inspiration. What he's doing with the singing, what he's doing with the rapping, with the mixtapes, the Chicks tape, that was so innovative. That was, when I listened to that Chicks tape, that's curation. I was like, and it's like this is curation. And even what's happening right now with all the nostalgia, everyone's slowing down and enjoying all the nostalgia, all the versus battles, et cetera, et cetera. That's appreciation of like heritage and legacies, et cetera, et cetera. So so I just want to shout out that one young artist, because he's doing it I mean, I know everyone here agrees that, but I just wanted to throw that in.
How much is he paying you, Tuma?
absolutely zero. Absolutely zero.
That's not nice.
Dude,
that's not nice, man.
Just playing with you, Tuma.
No, it's okay. I shout out to Andrew also.
Thank you
Shout
all
out to
so
Tuma.
much.
Yeah.
We want to thank you guys for being so open and honest. Thanks for your infinite wisdom, your transparency. Thanks for being so passionate, especially you, Tuma. And